So once more, a warm welcome to everyone. I really appreciate your presence right here, and I want to tell us that this training is especially brought to us by Society of Petroleum Engineers (ASU for short). Although you must have heard about SP simply means Society of Petroleum Engineers. We have different chapters around different schools. We have 5 sections. A lot of SP. So you want to know about SP, go to www.sp.org to know about SP. So
without further ado, I want to introduce our very esteemed speaker. His name is Engineer Dr. Ono Maxwell. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, my dear Nick. Good evening, all. It is my pleasure to be invited to interact with you and present something on research report writing. Slide number 1. A research report in science and technology is a written document which presents the results or findings of an experiment or field observation in a coherent and logical manner. A good research report must present sufficient information so that each reader can 1. Assess observations, 2. Repeat experiments, and 3. Evaluate intellectual processes. Now, in science and technology, research is our key areas, research and development. It is through research that one can observe, establish experiments that can also be repeated by others. When we say research, research is endless. But when we go into research, very important area is to establish a scope. What is our scope? What are our limitations? To what end are we carrying this research? What is our research boundary? Because if we don't define our scope, if we don't define our boundary, like I said, research is endless. So very important is establishing the scope of your research. And it is very important for us to know that it is only through research. If you remember, science is defined as a systematic study of nature. Why technology has to do with the technical know-how, the physical thing, and the procedure of implementation of the theories and observations established through science and its methodologies. So science and technology, as we all know, is a very key or cardinal instrument for national development. And the research must always be continuous in science and technology as long as we live. Remember, the more we live, the more we learn.
That's all I need. There's no one I'd rather see close to me. That's all I need.
To generate a research report, a research process must have been taking place. For you to say, I want to report something, you must have observed something, you must have done something. So for you to say, I want to report a research, simply means you must have done a research in a particular area on a particular topic. Research can say to be the process of arriving at dependable solutions to problems through planned and systematic collection, analysis, and interpretation of data. You see the sequence. Research can be said to be a process. You see, in science and technology, very important science, because technology comes after science. For us to arrive at a dependable, watch the word, a dependable solutions. Some solutions are not dependable, but for us to arrive at dependable solutions, research must take place in a very planned and systematic manner, which will involve collection, analysis, and interpretation of data. Slide 3. To most students, the most difficult aspect of a research project is the choice of research topic. Now that most of us are students, including myself, I'm a student of ICANN. I want to announce during the time NEC I was reading out my was reading a citation of my achievements so far in academics. I want to say here that I am no longer MBA in view. I am now MBA. I've completed my MBA program. And currently, I'm an ICANN student. So that is where all of us are still in the business as students. Very difficult aspect of studentship in our penultimate year is establishing our research topic. In institute, for instance, and other conventional universities in Nigeria, most times we depend on lecturers to give us topic. I was privileged to have done my master's in Germany. Lecturers will give you the choice of coming up with 1 or 2 or 3 topics of your interest, of your research interest, putting up a synopsis. And your supervisor will go through the 1, 2, 3 topics as stated, go through the synopsis. I should be able, as a supervisor, to guide you to say, okay, out of these 3 topics submitted, I will approve this. So students are given the opportunity, researchers are given the opportunities to choose topic for themselves. Like I said, although there are no standard rules that will ensure the suitability of a research problem, but there are a number of suggestions that can be made as guides in the choice of a research topic. They are, number 1, the topic must be of personal interest to the researcher. The researcher must have interest. Once there is no interest, there is no motivation. So that is why you must allow a researcher to come up with a topic of interest. The topic should be sufficiently original that it does not involve objectionable duplication. In academic world, your topic must be original. Original in the sense that it does not necessarily mean that people must not have done 1 or 2 things in that area, but you are going to create a niche, a problem you want to solve from either an existing work that is ongoing or the one that has been done. Now you say, this is my own contribution to knowledge. This is the area, this is my scope. Though this work has been done, but in this social area, nothing sufficient has been done. So it must be original. You must not go and copy what some other person have done. We are not saying you may not toe the line of other people, other researchers before you in a particular area, but you should be able to make it original in trying to crave out a niche from what other people have done before so that your work will be original. 3, the topic must be significant, that is capable of contributing to existing knowledge, like I mentioned before. Your work should be able to contribute, we call it contribution to knowledge, should be able to add flavor to what other researchers have done in the past or what other researchers are still doing with respect to that area that you have chosen to do your research. 4, your research must be feasible. You should not come up with a topic that is not achievable. Feasibility simply means workability of the process. So whatever research topic you want to bring on the table, first of all, you must look at what you have around you, that it is feasible. Feasibility in the sense that, for example, most times in this part of the world, we are constrained by availability of equipment. So you should not come up with something that you not see any instrument. If you have to do instrumental analysis, you don't have any instrument to do that instrumental analysis or equipment to analyze. So you must look at what is available. What can we do? So your topic must be feasible. Then the topic must be consistent with the researcher's competence, interest, and circumstance. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So the last one is that the topic must be consistent. The last one is that the topic must be consistent with the researcher's competence, interest, and circumstance. You can't be in chemical engineering and you are doing a research in medical sciences. You can't be in chemical engineering and are doing a research in core geological sciences. So that topic must be consistent with that person's competence, that person's area of competence, interest, and circumstance. Next slide. Sources of research topic. How do we generate our research topic? 1, a research topic can evolve from personal experiences and observation of a set of problems. somebody can, out of experience, say, let me look at this thing. Like they said, necessity is the mother of invention. Experience, someone's experience can motivate that person to say, I have experience, this ugly experience in this area. Let me research and see if I can establish a solution to this problem. So most times, some of this research topic comes from personal experience and observation. Another area where you can, another source of research topic is literature. A review of literature on subject of interest can review several important issues and problems that call for research. Like I said, if you go through literature in a particular topic or in a particular area, or in a particular problem, though many researchers may have worked on that particular area, you will still find areas that needs to be researched further to establish solution. So from literature review, when you review what other people, researchers have done in that area, you should be able to say, from this review, they have covered this area, they have covered this area, much work has not been done in this direction. Therefore, you can, from there, create or generate your research topic. Number 3 is many past research projects often make recommendations for future research. By the time you carry out a research, at the end, like I told you, research is endless. If you remember, when computer was discovered, the first computer was as big as a 2-story building. With time, research were done in those areas, and today we have microcomputers, computers like our phones are computers. So people have continually been researching in that area to improve on that area. So when people do research, at the end of that research, they will say, we are making this further recommendation, because you can't finish everything in one research. So someone can also pick a topic from recommendations of previous researchers. And finally, theories, which are propositions explaining certain phenomena, are also good sources of research topics. So one can also generate research topic from theories established by scientists and technologies, where there are need for us to do further research to come up with a better solution, better findings. One can from there create a topic that can serve as a research topic. Next slide. Citation. Next slide, please. Citation and citation style. When we do research, remember what we are looking at is how do we report our research findings. And we've mentioned here that one of the sources of establishing research topic is going through literature, reviewing literature, looking at some other person's work, what other researchers have done in that area. It simply means that may create a basis for you to establish a topic, and definitely, of course, because some other researchers have worked in that area, in one way or the other, you are going to intermingle with their work, with their observations, and with their discussion, and that gave rise to citation. Citation simply means a way of giving credence or credit to individuals for their creative and intellectual works that you utilize to support your research. It can also be used to locate particular sources and combat plagiarism. What is plagiarism? Plagiarism simply means when you take another person's work and present it as if it is your original work without citing the person. In research report, we are not saying you may not copy. We are not saying you cannot look at other work, but we say if need be that you must present another person's work to support your finding, you should be able to cite that work so that you will not take the glory of another man's hard work. It's a big problem in the academic world. Plagiarism is an academic theft. So typically, a citation can include the author's name, date, location of the publishing company, journal title, or DOI, which is the digital object identifier. A citation style details the information necessary for a citation and how the information is ordered, as well as punctuations and other formatting. So how do we choose our citation style? We have predominantly 3 types of citation style. The first one is the APA method. The APA means American Psychological Association. We have the MLA, Modern Language Association. We have the Chicago Turabian style. So for each of these ones, the ones that we use in our universities these days, the one that is predominant is the APA style. Next slide. Now, I'm using this slide to demonstrate, show you the pattern, how the APA citation style looks like. If you have extracted something from a book, for instance, Sapolsky textbook that was written in 2017, the biology of woman at our best and worst. So if I've extracted something, this is how we are going to cite it. In the text, we have column 1, material type, column 2, in-text citation, and column 3, bibliography. Bibliography simply means your reference list at the end of your work. But in the main work, in the in-text citation, this is how you are going to cite it. The second one, if you have extracted from an article in a printed journal, this is how you are going to cite it. Western, 2009. This is where you have only one author. The third one is when you have more than one author, from 2 and above. From 2 and above, this is how you are going to cite it in the body of your report. Grady et al. 2019. That et al. Shows that you have more than 2 authors. So this is how you put it in in the body of your report, and this is how you are going to present it at the end of your work in your reference list. Next slide. Now we are going to the main work, component of research report. Remember, this is for science and technology report. So the major component of our research paper includes, number 1, preliminary pages. B, your chapter 1, which is your introduction. Chapter 2, which is your literature review or review of related literature. Chapter 3, your materials and methods. Chapter 4, results and discussion. And the last chapter where you have your conclusion. So we even include findings, summary of findings. At PhD level, we call it findings. So, but at this level, we say conclusion and recommendation, and finally your references. So let's take them one after the other. Next slide. Next slide, please. The first component, which is the preliminary pages, contains your title page. The next page will be your dedication page. Though I forgot, after your title page, we have what we call approval page or certification page, where you will claim that this work was done by you and it is original. You will sign, so that if you fall into plagiarism problem, we will hold you responsible. We move to dedication page, where you dedicate your work to whoever you want to dedicate it to. Then acknowledgement, where you acknowledge whoever you want to acknowledge, who has in one way or the other contributed to the overall success of that research. The next one will be a table of contents, list of tables. This list of tables will come either in chapter 3 or in chapter 4. List of figures, if any. Then the abstract. The abstract is just a brief description of your summary. In that brief description, you describe the objective of the study, the research method employed, major findings, and their implications. Next slide. We move to chapter 1, introduction. The introduction part of the research report should set the initial tone for the research paper. It should provide the following. 1, background to the study. which set the general tone for the study. So in your introduction, we call it chapter 1. We now have section 1.0, which will be background to the study. Background simply means trying to introduce what you want to do in a very comprehensive manner to your reader. The background, you now tell us, my topic is this. This is what has been happening around this topic. This is what, in a nutshell, this is what Mr. B and Mr. B has already done in this area. In a brief way, this is what they have articulated, what they have observed, and what they have come to conclusion to state about that research topic. And finally, you narrow it down towards the end of the background to the study in 1 or 2 lines before the end. You now say, thus, this research report is aimed at studying. You now state your title. The next thing, which will be a 1.1, is your statement of the problem. The statement of the problem informs the reader of the specific problem under study. What is the motivation of going into this study? What problem is this study going to solve? You can't just wake up and say, bring a topic, let's research. Like I said, that for you to pick a research topic, it must be a topic that you should have interest in, a topic that should be able to solve problem. So in that statement of problem, you are trying to let the reader know this is the problem this work intends to solve. Purpose of the study. So we call it objective of the study. What are the objectives of this study? This is section 1.2, where you now outline one after the other different objectives that will help you arrive at the aim of the study. Remember, the aim of the study is the topic of your research. So you outline, in achieving this aim, we will follow so steps. In outlining for each step, there must be an objective that must be established. All the outlined objective must gear towards arriving at the aim or the title of your research. In doing that, not in all situations, but in some situations, there may be need for research questions and hypotheses. And these things, research questions, are questions you ask. In doing this thing, it's just like a rhetorical question that is left for you alone to answer. For me to achieve this, these questions need to be answered. And for me to answer these questions, research questions, I will establish this hypothesis. Like I earlier mentioned, research is endless, so you must establish a limit to your study, which is the scope of the study. If you don't establish a scope, then it simply means that your research is endless. And finally, you do some operational definition of terms used in that chapter 1. Next slide. Next slide, please. Like I said, one of the components of that chapter 1, but not in all cases, is research question. And in answering research question, you make use of a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a formulation. The formulation and the use of hypothesis in research provides a guide and direction to the research, a tentative answer to the question that your investigation will confirm or disconfirm. Remember, one of the key things that we must understand in research is that we must not always bear in mind that our research result must go this way. There are what we call negative result and positive results. Your research can give you a negative result. And what is the effect of that? The effect is that you'll be able to establish to the world that there is no need going this direction. There is no way there. you've achieved a lot, because if you've not done it, maybe one or two other person may delve into that and also will not get result. So your intention, you must not have anything in mind. You should be open-minded, but you must have a direction when carry out a research. That is why we said that your hypothesis is a tentative answer to the question that you are investigating, either to confirm or to disconfirm. There are basically two types of hypotheses. We have non-parametric hypothesis, where variables are not expressed in measurable terms. Then we have parametric hypothesis, where the relationship between two or more variables are expressed in statistical and measurable terms. Now, for you to have a good hypothesis, that hypothesis must have the following features. One, it must be testable. Two, it must be plausible. Three, it should be a statement that will establish relationship between two or more variables. And your hypothesis must be consistent with the current knowledge and should not be ambiguous. So it must be specific, simple to understand, and should be able to show relationship between two or more variables. And that will give rise to the hypothesis being testable or verifiable. Next slide. The chapter 2 is our literature review. This chapter deals with the review of literatures which are considered important to the study. Remember, if you go back to our initial slide where we said from where and where can one generate or create his or her research topic, we said one of those sources is literature review, from literature. So in your chapter 2, you are going to, in a very comprehensive and detailed manner, state every of your literature you've reviewed, you've studied, that have guided you in one, choosing that topic, and will also support the procedures you are going to adopt in achieving your research aim. Your chapter 2 can be discussed under the following subheading. I want to state here that if I'm to be strict with research report with respect to science and technologies, there are certain things I should not include here. But I'm including them so that it will be a versatile knowledge for you tomorrow. If you want to do an MPA, you want to go into management sciences, you want to go to humanities, you want to go to various areas to explore, to do your MBA, do your MSc, PGD, and etc. So in what I have presented is a comprehensive way of establishing your literature review, which is a chapter 2. Number 1, there must be a conceptual framework where you do very important explanation, linking what you want to do to what other people have done. Theoretical framework. A major theory and theories related to the topic are reviewed here, and the relevance of the theories to the study are also indicated. Empirical studies using relevant subheading. Empirical studies are abstracts like in nature. It should indicate the purpose of the study, sampling technique, instrument for data collection, method of data analysis, and major findings of the studies reviewed. And finally, appraisal of review literature. So the literature review should be summarized and the gap in literature that justifies the current study indicated. You see, one of the reasons of expressing or showing this literature review is to help the reader know that 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 200 persons have done a work in this area, related work. But in all, there is still a gap to be filled. So by the time you do your literature review, you should be able to establish a clear gap that you intend to bridge, a clear gap that your research findings intend to bridge in that area of research. That's the sense of doing literature review. So for us, even in that chapter 2, the last section is summary of related journals. For PhD work, the supervisor may say, review 50 journals, review 100 journals. You should be able to, while reviewing, he said, Maxwell et al. 2015 studied this, and in studying this, their findings are, you established. Neka et al. Did this, their findings are this. Jerry et al. Did this, their findings are this. At the end of the day, you should be able to say, in all of these, there are still gaps to be filled in this area. Thus, my research study is geared towards filling this gap. By doing that, you have established a research gap that your result will bridge that gap. Next slide. Methodology. The processes and procedures that will be followed in carrying out this study are discussed under the following subheading. If you see, I said for management sciences, I said for engineering, science and engineering. In this, under this chapter for science and engineering, we have 3 broad sections. Your research design. 2, materials to be used and apparatus. And finally, methods to procedures to be followed. So, but you know, when you are reporting, you will be using past tense. So, in this chapter, for science and engineering report, you should be able to establish your research design. If you have done optimization, nowadays we have softwares that are very helpful in this area that will help you in establishing what we call design of experiment, DOE. How you are going to design your experiment. That software will help you to say, if you are working with so variables, for instance, if your key variables, we call them process variables or process parameter. Assuming that your process variables or process parameter are like time, contact time, you are studying the effect of contact time, you are studying the effect of temperature, maybe you are also studying the effect of dosage. If you are using 3 variables and you want to do optimization, we have a lot of softwares now, like Design Expert, MATLAB, and a whole lot of them that can help you in establishing your research design. Then you have to list out materials to be used or material used. And if you have done what we call instrumental analysis, you're able to say, I use this instrument, GCMS, you state the model. FTIR machine, you state the model. SRD machine, you state the model. You should be able to mention the small laboratory apparatus that you used. You use your Petri dish, you use a weighing banner, you use this, pH probe, and etc. Then your method should be explained comprehensively. Remember, we said what you are about to do is, by the time you finish doing what you are doing, establishing your research result, you are going to recommend for further research. People will go back, the way you've studied other people's work, people will go back to study your work, and your work will also become another person's literature review. So you should be able to explain the method, make it very comprehensive that another person can also adopt that method. But for management sciences, they go through research design, they make use of population sampling, population of the study. For instance, population may be, if you come to engineering, in engineering we have male, we have female. Or in engineering, we have year 1 student, we have year 2 student, we have year 3, we have year 4, we have final year student. So summing them together is the population of the study. So when we say population of the study, we may say student of engineering faculty. But when we go down to sampling and sampling techniques, we now say But with respect to year 2 students, now we are now beginning to narrow it down. So research design refers to the overall strategy that is utilized to carry out research that define a logical plan to tackle established research questions through data collection, data interpretation, data analysis, and data discussion. So in doing that, we must always look at the population of the study. So the population, like I said, is the entire group that you want to draw your conclusion from. So we say we want to do it with respect case study using students of engineering faculty. But a sample is a specific group that you will collect data from. We cannot say from year 2. So you see, we started narrowing down to a particular sample in that population. So the size of the sample is always less than the total size of the population. So in our sampling techniques, we have various types of sampling techniques, which we may not have time to begin to look at them one after the other. But we have the random sampling technique. We have the systematic. Random simply means you can come to a class and say random picking from this, pick from this side, pick from this side. Then we can say systematic. Okay, if you, all the ladies move to this side, all the men move to this. So you begin to do systematic sampling technique. It could be clustered. You can say, okay, let's cluster them together. It can be stratified. In between, we can pick samples. Then for instrument for data collection, the data collection instrument means when we say instrument for data collection, what instrument are we going to use to generate our data? For management sciences, you see, apart from for science and engineering, your data collection is coming from experimental method, from your experiment. You are picking your own data from experiment carried out in the lab, or information from already made result, or from a research that is relating to what we are doing. But for management sciences, their data collection comes from questionnaires. They prepare questionnaires and give to individuals to answer. They can also get their data from interviewing people. They can also get their data from going to journals, directories, diaries, and etc. to pick up their data. So validation of instrument and reliability of the instrument. So you should be able to make sure that whatever data you are getting, it should be a valid data. And not only valid, it must be reliable. So you must look at the source. What is the source of that data? So validity and reliability are concepts used to evaluate the quality of a research. They indicate how well a method, technique, or text measure. Reliability is all about consistency of a measure, while validity is all about the accuracy of a measure. So if you are picking data, you should be able to establish how valid is this data and how reliable is this data, because we are going to use it to do your research and possibly come up with a solution. And finally, method of data analysis. For management sciences, we have different softwares like your Excel, SPSS, and etc. For science and engineering, like I mentioned, your design expert can also help you in data analysis. Your Excel can also help you in data analysis. When we say analyzing data, you can analyze the data by plotting graphs, figures, and charts. Next slide. Chapter 4. Next slide, please. Yeah, chapter 4 is all about your result presentation and discussion. This is where you report your findings and present them in a systematic manner. It should be reported in a sufficient detail to justify any conclusion. In this chapter, we make use of tables, graphs, charts, figures, and they must be judiciously employed to present summaries. Number the tables in order of occurrence in the text. Then your discussion explains the significance of your findings by relating what you observe to the problem you set out to investigate in your introduction. You begin to say, did your investigation accomplish your purpose? So in this chapter, we are going to present your findings and discuss it in order, in the order and manner you have established your objective in chapter 1. We have a section where we got 1.2, section 1.2, either 1.2 or 1.3, where we say purpose of this study. Some we call it objective of this study. And I said in this section, this is where we will itemize our objectives that will be geared towards achieving our aim. And our aim simply means the topic of that research. So in your chapter 4, you are going to report your result in that order that you have it in your objective of study. You pick objective number 1. You correspond your reporting with objective number 1, objective number 2. So it must be in that sequence that you have established your objectives in your chapter 1. That is the sequence you're going to do your result reporting and discussion. Next slide. Chapter 5, conclusion and recommendation. After presenting your result and discussion in the previous chapter 4, the researcher is now in a position to draw conclusions and implications. So you should be able to make a brief summary in an itemized form. Number 1, you put down your conclusion, one after the other. And finally, suggest for further studies. That is where you make recommendation that based on this, I hereby recommend that further studies should be undertaken in these areas, which are or were beyond the scope of your study. Next slide. Finally, your reference. Remember, it is an academic crime to copy someone's work. Remember that in your discussion, you are going to back up your discussion with an established knowledge. While you are discussing your result, you say, my result behaved this way. It is in consonance or in line with the study. You mentioned that topic by Maxwell et al. That studied this, or it is in variance. It mustn't be in line with. But whenever you are discussing, whenever you are establishing your discussion, you should be able to discuss the science behind it. Your discussion should not end with, as you can see from the graph, that as the temperature increases, the yield increases. You should be able to tell us why, the science behind it. That as the temperature increases, the yield increases. Due to, you explain the science, and you are going to support your result with other person's result, other researchers who may have done one or two things relating to what you've done. You say it is in consonance with Maxwell et al. 2019, who also studied this and observed that as the temperature increases, the yield also increases. And that was as a result of, you tell us the science. So after you must have mentioned Maxwell et al. And all these things, at the end of the day, it is also obligated on you to have your reference list where you will now say, list out all the references cited in the main work, as I showed you on the page, where, and I said the upper format should be strictly adhered to. All literatures, illustration, including figures, even in your literature review, including figures used must be well cited. Students must be conscious of plagiarism. Finally, the research report ends with appendices. For us in engineering, because you must go to the lab to do experiment, there must be appendices. You are not expected to put all your research in the body of your report. You bring in the important ones, and the appendices, you should be able to show us all the experimental results for each of the experiments you carried out with respect to your research study. Thank you for your time, and may God bless you.
Wow, thank you so
Thank you
much,
very much.
sir. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much, sir. Please, let's appreciate Dr. Maxwell, please.